It's Monday, and welcome back to the Joust About Careers podcast. This is the place to learn about careers from the people who are actually doing the work every day. I'm your host, Brian Brott, and this week's guest, our final one for the 23-24 school year, is a Senior Vice President and the Director of Regional Economic Development at Huntington National Bank. In the interview, he shares how a typical day looks in his position, how his degree in communications provided a solid foundation for his career journey, the opportunities there are in the banking field, and much more. Whether you are interested in a banking career or are still exploring your options, I hope that what today's guest shares will help all of you make better career decisions and have fulfilling career journeys. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of the Joust About Careers podcast. And this week we have Todd Bailey with us, who is a 1997 Van Buren graduate, and he is currently working as the Senior Vice President and Director of Regional Economic Development at Huntington Bank. So, Todd, I really appreciate you joining us today, and I'd love to start out by just hearing about what does a typical day look like for you in that position as a Vice President and Director of Regional Economic Development?
Well, thanks, Brian. It's great to be with you on your podcast today. I think you're approaching 100 episodes. I think now, which is terrific, and I've enjoyed following and seeing some of the careers of a whole host of Van Buren graduates and others, and friends of the community tell their stories and get a sense of their careers. So thanks for joining, and go Black Knights. So second to your question about my role in economic development and here at Huntington, well, I've been at the bank almost 20 years through two different stints, mostly in government relations and communications. This is a brand new position at Huntington. It's one we recently created. We have been headquartered in Ohio and in the Midwest for 160 years. So we have a deep, deep presence and a deep belief in the region. And as you're probably aware, and your students are probably aware, we are seeing just a massive, what I often say is a restoring and reshoring of American leadership in advanced manufacturing. There is a significant amount of investment, and a lot of that is coming back to the Midwest and places where Huntington has a significant presence. So if you think about things like Intel's $28 billion investment in Central Ohio, or Abbott's $500 million investment in Wood County, or Honda's investing $4 billion in some of its facilities, including a new EV battery facility in Fayette County. Joby, which is an electric vertical takeoff and landing manufacturer. They're California based, but they've opened a new manufacturing facility, a $500 million investment in Dayton. This is a transformational moment for our region, and one that's going to create a ton of opportunity for students coming out of Van Buren and everywhere else across the entire state, and for that matter, across the region. So my role in that sort of ecosystem is to try to make sure that the bank is in a leadership role to help connect to the right communities, the right leaders within economic development. So think about leaders at places like Jobs Ohio, the Jobs Ohio Network partners. So up in Northwest Ohio, that's the Regional Growth Partnership, which covers the region up there. Local economic development leaders, so those might be folks who are working for the city of Findlay and Hancock County, or might be working more broadly. And then to bring the capacity and capital of the bank to help support that growth across the region. We think there's an opportunity. In some ways, the capital part is the easy part, right? There's a lot of lending opportunity. Where we think we might have a bigger opportunity, and where my role is focused on, is how do we help serve as a catalyst and a collaborator and a convener in bringing together business leaders and community leaders who have a real vested interest in seeing the success of Ohio into a brand new economy, moving forward into the next generation.
Obviously, like you said, a huge opportunity, and you are right at the center of that. And I have to imagine that when you were in high school, you didn't necessarily see yourself in a position like this. What were your plans when you were in high school and getting ready to graduate from Van Buren?
So there's that classic interview question, where do you see yourself 5 years from now? And I can tell you when I graduated from Van Buren, I don't think I could have answered that question. I mean, I probably had an answer for that question that I, had thought through. And even when I graduated from Ohio Northern, I'm not sure I could have answered it with great certainty. But what I found, and I was a communications major at Ohio Northern, and what I found was a field that prepared you for a whole wide range of professional options and an in-demand profession, corporate, agency, nonprofit, trade associations. There's literally thousands of possibilities. And where I ultimately landed was at a statewide banking trade association, which then led me to some interest in the policy and political environment. It led me to a role at Huntington in the communications side. And then from there, I moved to Atlanta and had a communications role in the aviation industry during a time of real turbulence, no pun intended, but the regional airline that I worked for at the time was being sold to another regional airline. There was a planning process in place for a bankruptcy. We were owned by another larger airline at the time, which ended up filing for bankruptcy a week after selling us to another regional airline. There was labor negotiations, and none of that would I have predicted when I was a student at Van Buren. What I hoped for, though, was to leverage the foundation that I learned at Van Buren, and the incredible education there, and the foundation from Ohio Northern, and then that eventually has led me to a career that's taken a number of different paths that's led to me to where I am today on the economic development side.
When you think about communications, I mean, did you love writing when you were in high school? Did you love speaking? What was it about communications that made you say, that's what I would like to do, at least to get started on my career journey?
I think it was a pretty honest skills assessment for me. So I did well in my courses at Van Buren, but my strongest subjects were perhaps not math and science. I did well in those, and I stayed focused on my studies throughout. But I found that I had probably more of a tendency toward communication, writing, public speaking, building relationships. A lot of the work that I do, I was a PR, a public relations major in communications. They call it, at Ohio Northern, it's communication arts degree with a public relations concentration. A lot of the work that I've done in public relations early on the corporate communications side, working with members of the media and building relationships there. On the government relations side, and I know we're going to maybe touch on that a little bit too, in media relations, I was building relationships with reporters. In government relations, I was building relationships with elected officials. And on economic development, I'm now building relationships with local, regional, and statewide economic development leaders. And each of those were an opportunity for me to leverage the communications and public relations degree that I got at Ohio Northern.
And I think that just shows a degree like that can be used in so many different ways, and those skills are utilized in so many different ways. You mentioned working down with the airline in Atlanta, going through the bankruptcy and so forth. As you think about that experience and the experiences you had, like you said, at the Ohio Bankers League, how have all of those things led you to be effective in what you're currently doing?
So first of all, they were incredible professional experiences, none of which I had predicted. So I joined the Ohio Bankers League out of, it was my first job. I had a generalist communications role with the organization. And very shortly thereafter, the trade association that I was a part of merged with another trade association. And so I got some sort of early foundational skills on mergers and acquisitions. There's a people side of the process, there's a financial side of the process, there's a culture side of the process. And because we were a small team, I got to do a lot of that work, and it was a great opportunity. I moved over from the trade association to Huntington, and Huntington subsequently went through two separate mergers. We purchased two other financial institutions. And so that continued to build that skill set of how do you communicate through just a significant amount of change, right? Some of it which can be very difficult, some of it which can directly affect your colleagues, the business structure. And then I moved from there to the airline. And when we were at the airline, it was very clear right away that the airline industry was going through a very challenging economic environment. So at the time at which our regional airline was owned by Delta, I worked for a company they called Atlantic Southeast, which actually no longer exists. We were on a dual track. We were going to either be spun out, or we were going to go into bankruptcy with our parent company. And what ended up happening, as I mentioned a second ago, is we were spun out a week earlier, and then a week later, both Delta and Northwest filed for bankruptcy. They subsequently ended up merging themselves. There was, to your question of what was it about those experiences, there was an intensity in the learning. I mean, in college, there's not a class that is, here's how to communicate in the middle of mergers and acquisitions. Here's how to communicate when you have two open labor contract negotiations taking place simultaneously in the middle of that entire environment. What I did lean on, and what I think students at Van Buren can lean on when they graduate from Van Buren and move to college, is the sort of foundation of how do you communicate clear messages? How do you come up with a strategy? How do you understand what your audiences are? How do you understand what your objectives are? And then how do you execute against that plan? And then probably the most important piece, and this certainly happens on the policy side very frequently, but in any corporate environment, is how do you adjust to variables that you didn't anticipate, right? So I used to often say that 50% of my work on the policy side and government relations was completely unplanned. There's just no way to adjust to whatever might be happening at a federal, state, or local level in the political environment, or something new that could happen that could change the entire course of where the policy discussion is happening. Those skills about how to adjust, the foundation I learned at Ohio Northern through the public relations and communications program, and then you build on that with professional experiences. So I've now been through a whole host of mergers. It's a very natural, consolidation is a very natural part of any business, but certainly is a part of the financial services industry. And so I've had an opportunity to have great experience through a number of acquisitions, and at both the trade association, aviation, and financial services at Huntington.
All of that experience definitely leading you to where you are. And I think as a lot of times students, they're sometimes maybe afraid of that experience, or, oh, I'm not going to do that very well. But ultimately, that's how we grow and get better and get prepared for those situations that come down the line.
100% right.
Obviously, all of that led you to your current role in economic development. Are you, is it a lot of meetings every day? Are you in front of groups talking every day? Are you just taking all the information that other people give you and using that? How does all of that work?
Yes to all of that. So it varies on any particular day, as any career really does, right? You probably had, I know you've had a whole host of folks on your podcast who have said every day is a little bit different. I think that's a very natural extension of any particular career. I'm in a bit of a unique role because, at least to our knowledge, Huntington is the only financial institution at this time that has an economic development position. And what we figured out when we were looking at the investment that was coming to the Midwest, and we created a team really focused on how do we help serve as a catalyst to help drive more economic growth, right? If the economy of Ohio does well, Huntington will do well because our customers will do well and our communities will do well, right? There's a real ecosystem that's built in there. And so what we figured out is there's an amazing network of economic development leaders who are very, very experienced in economic incentives, tax incentives, site selection, business retention and expansion efforts, and they're doing that work every single day. What we're trying to do through my role on the economic development side at Huntington is make sure that we build relationships. So your question of, hey, what are you doing every day? I'm spending a lot of my time trying to figure out how can I take the resources and the expertise and the the purpose of the bank. So we've got a purpose to make people's lives better, help businesses thrive, and strengthen communities we serve. Within the focus of that mission, how do I help bring the capital and capacity of Huntington to help support that? So I'm working with, so last week I was up in Maumee at the Regional Growth Partnerships annual meeting, right? And that was about connecting with the leaders in Northwest Ohio. I have spent a lot of time traveling the entire state and traveling the entire region in my role in both government relations and in economic development, so that if you were a economic development expert in, let's just say you were in Seneca County, and then there's a great team in Seneca County, and there's a great team in Crawford or in Hancock and all the regions of Northwest Ohio, and you had an opportunity, but you needed a financial. There was a capital stack that was coming together, and you were looking for a financial partner, but you were looking for one who had a bigger perspective on not just this as a loan opportunity, but about this opportunity is building a new ecosystem or building a new opportunity in the entire region. I want you to think of Huntington first, but Huntington has 20,000 people, and we have 10,000 people in the state of Ohio. For our economic development leaders, the bank can be difficult to navigate. And what we're trying to do is create a relationship portfolio that if you see that opportunity, I've been at the bank 20 years now. I've worked with our business segment leaders through the policy side for many, many years. Just call me and we'll help you navigate and we'll help you get to the right place. And we're looking for opportunities to drive new economic growth in across the state. So is that meetings? Yes. Is that traveling all across the state of Ohio? Yes. Is that spending time coming up with a strategy and objectives and goals for where we think we can make the most difference? Yes. Is that navigating a meeting structure for others and sharing information about the new developments that are coming? Yes to all of those things. And I think that's one of the exciting opportunities. So we are building this, and I'll wrap up here short on a long answer made longer. We're building this from scratch. And so, people often say, oh, what do you do? And I talk about building relationship portfolios and expanding the bank's reputation. And ultimately, obviously, we're looking to help drive revenue for the bank and helping our customers succeed. Part of it is we're still figuring it out. And I think for your students, to your point a couple minutes ago, there's real professional value in not having all the answers and having to work through a process and work through a plan and figure it out a little bit as you go and make course corrections and have to adjust along the way. And we spend a lot of time on our economic developments doing exactly that.
Yeah, that's all very interesting. And the fact that you are seemingly the only person in this role in banks in this area, just continues to reinforce to students that the world of work is constantly evolving. New positions are being created as there's a need. So as you look into the future in the banking industry, are there some careers that you think will be in high demand over the next 5 to 10 years?
10 years is hard to predict, right? Things change so quickly. There's obviously there's a lot of discussion about AI. Although I'll tell you that from a financial institutions perspective, not just us, but many, many other banks, AI has been a regular part of our business environment for many, many years. I'll say this about banking and the job environment. The banking industry is very dynamic. It's probably maybe one of the only industries that touches every other economic sector across the entire country and across the entire globe, right? We're working with the largest, most complex international companies to the smallest startup businesses with an entrepreneur, right? From the first time account opener who's looking to save to a retiree who's looking at a variety of investments, right? We're engaging with community and elected officials at a federal, state, and local level, trying to drive economic growth across the region. So there are a huge number of options for students that might be interested in a banking career. And, certainly I think folks are probably most familiar with our retail presence, right? They're familiar with, they go to a branch, they open up a savings account or a checking account, and that can be a great career. And that can lead to other roles in business banking and regional banking and commercial banking. But we have several thousand colleagues who work in technology, who manage complex servers and hardware and software and architecture and program management and cybersecurity, who are focused on the safety of the banking system. We have colleagues who are focused on, and I know you've talked to a number of these folks on your podcast before, folks who are focused on user experience and the digital environment, and what does our app look like, and what does our product set look like? What does a customer, a financial institution customer, what do they want from their bank today? But more importantly, what do they want from their bank tomorrow? And what are the expectations 3 years from now? And how can we help provide that to customers sooner? So there's a whole broad product set. There's a fintech environment. We have partnered with a host of fintechs. We have a corporate ventures team that is investing in fintech customers as we try to make sure that we've got the right products to help serve our customers in the future. And there, for folks who are very operations oriented, there's a very significant operations team that makes sure that all of our systems and our processes and our underwriting all move very smoothly. There are compliance opportunities. There's attorneys. There are folks who are working on culture and learning. One of the things that I'm really proud of the work that Huntington does is we really spend a lot of time helping provide opportunities on the learning development front for colleagues. So you don't sort of just come here and work and we say, all right, we're all set. There's a very robust system to help colleagues continue their learning through, not just through their work, but other job opportunities, and through a very robust training platform that we have. So I would encourage students, when they think about banking, think about it more broadly than just the financial side. Think about it as a sector that affects all industry, and as a whole broad system of opportunities, some of which are banking like specific bankers, and many of which are much broader and start to touch into a whole number of other industry segments, engineers, legal, et cetera. If you look at it, and I went yesterday because I knew we were having this conversation today. We have 550 open positions posted on our website right now. And that's just Huntington. Ohio's home to a whole diverse mix of banking institutions. We have the largest institution in the world with a very significant presence in Ohio, and we have de novo institutions that are just getting off the ground, and that's a real competitive advantage. And so I think for students who are thinking about potential for a career, financial services is clearly one where there is a ton of opportunity. And it's certainly been one for me, where I started in communications and then went to government relations, and now have a brand new role in economic development. So that for me, it's proven to be one where I haven't ever been a real banker, so to speak, although we are working on business development frequently, but the industry's given me a ton of opportunity.
And it sounds like there, like you said, are just so many opportunities out there for students in almost any career field. So that's really good to know. So as we wrap up and you think back on your life since Van Buren, your career steps that you've taken, what would you say is the biggest thing that you've learned that you wish you had known when you were back in high school?
Maybe, and we've touched on this a little bit, that you don't have to know all the answers right away. I certainly felt a lot of pressure when I graduated from Van Buren and then from ONU to have a very clear career path, right? You have to get good grades, you have to get a good career, and I was supposed to have this very clear path that I was going to follow every step of the way. Interestingly enough, if I had actually coming out of Ohio Northern, if you had asked me, hey, what are you going to do? Because PR students very frequently sort of work in this environment, I would have told you, oh, I'm going to go work at a big PR agency, right? That's what and the truth of the matter is, it probably wouldn't have been a great environment for me. And it couldn't actually be further away from where I've actually ended up. And so, I'm not just suggesting that students just sort of float in the wind. Spend some time, put some thought and strategy and structure around your career goals and aspirations. But one of the things that when I was a student, I was very, very focused on what my career was going to be and what the path was going to be and how I needed to get there and what success looked like. And there's some importance to that. I don't want to discount that too much, but also give yourself some grace to find your own path, to take a new risk, to try something new. I didn't have any idea that I would end up in the banking industry, and that's just where the opportunity came out of college, and it's led to a terrific career. I didn't have any sense out of college that I would move to Atlanta, but we did, and it was an incredible professional experience. And then we have moved back. I didn't have any idea that through my job I'd have an opportunity to work across Huntington's 11 states and travel all over the country to a whole host of amazing cities. But being open and providing myself the opportunity and the flexibility to try something new and to be comfortable with that. I think the destination is certainly important, but I would encourage students not to look past the importance of the journey as well.
I think that is all very good information. And yes, a lot of graduates say something very similar to that. Have a plan, but be willing to try something new when those opportunities arise. And you obviously have shown that through your career, and really appreciate you sharing all of this, and good luck to you as you continue on your career journey.
Well, it was terrific to join you today. I'm excited for the next generation of Van Buren graduates, and I have no doubt that they are going to continue to do great things.
Thank you for making the Joust About Careers podcast part of your day. I hope you learned valuable information from this career story, and to be sure you don't miss upcoming episodes, please click subscribe on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform so you'll know when the next episode is released. Thank you for spending a portion of your day with me, and as always, come back next week to learn even more just about careers.